What does it mean for the algorithms to be racist? Because I think that that is something that people are talking about or thinking about, but knowing also that simultaneously racism exists in society, and that is why the algorithms are racist. So it's not the case, excuse me, it's not the case that the dating apps are creating racism. They might be making it worse. They certainly are automating it, as I argue in the book.
I'm Emma,
And I'm Nicole.
and you're listening to Mixed Up, a podcast about belonging and identity. We'll be discussing our personal experiences as well as those of our guests as we talk about all sorts, from topical issues to interracial relationships to why we need to re examine the phrase white passing and the power of hair.
We'll talk food, pop culture, and growing up in white majority environments, and even explore the conversations we never had with our parents.
Today we're talking to Apryl. Apryl is an assistant professor of communication and digital studies at the University of Michigan. She's a senior fellow in Trustworthy AI at the Mozilla Foundation and faculty associate at Harvard University's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. She's also the author of Not My Type: Automating Sexual Racism in Online Dating, published with Stanford University Press.
So I am a sociologist by training. I got my PhD in 2017 from Texas A&M University. And my areas of focus at the time were sort of cultural theory and race and ethnicity. And then by way of life and had a few jobs. And then I was a fellow at Harvard at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. And that's really, well, I was thinking about the internet before then because I was already sort of doing research on the internet and popular culture. But that is when I feel like I was really well supported and thinking through AI and how algorithms inform our lives. And of course, I had been using dating apps since 2013. I like to think of myself as an early adopter of Tinder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, you're an OG user.
Yeah, exactly. Dating apps have been around for a long time, longer than that even, but Tinder, I think, launched in 2012 or 2013. And so I was on it really early and I was trying to date in small town Texas or like college town Texas, College Station, Texas, if people know where that is. Um, and so the experience was just not great. It was not a great experience for me. And I started to wonder, like, what is happening inside these apps, like in the algorithms? What are they doing? How are they bringing this experience to life? And so that's how I got started in this area of work.
Amazing. And also, you've just published your book, which is very exciting. Congratulations. Which is called Not My Type: Automating Sexual Racism in Online Dating. So, obviously, as you've mentioned, taking a look at how sexual racism, race based discrimination is kind of baked into modern day dating culture through these apps and through the algorithm that kind of matches us together. Can you tell us a bit about the book and yeah, and again, like what you were hoping to share with us?
Absolutely. I have really been just thinking through what does it mean for the algorithms to be racist? Because I think that that is something that people are talking about or thinking about, but knowing also that simultaneously racism exists in society, and that is why the algorithms are racist. So it's not the case, excuse me, it's not the case that the dating apps are creating racism. They might be making it worse. They certainly are automating it, as I argue in the book. But the book is really about the interplay between the two, between society and the technology that amplifies our existing biases. And so, what I find essentially is that yes, algorithms that are used in dating apps do rely on race and ethnicity as metrics for evaluating attractiveness, and that might be used in their sorting mechanisms. But at the same time, they're doing that because humans have expressed that same pattern of bias. And so they're just replicating it and amplifying it. And I think it's really important for listeners to understand that tech, big tech, I'm not saying that it's great, but tech itself is inherently neutral. But the things that we as humans do to it, we're the ones who influence how the tech impacts our lives.
There are likely going to be people listening who maybe aren't dating and have never really used dating apps before or not super familiar with um, yeah, their functionality and the fact that there is an algorithm behind it. And I think we all have different ideas about what an algorithm is and what its functions are. But could you just, yeah, explain to us a little bit more about it in this context?
Yeah, so AI and algorithms are related, but they're not necessarily the same thing. Where algorithms are fancy math, they are like a directive programming that says, do math in this sequence. Where AI, artificial intelligence, is the ability for a computer or a technology to run on its own without human interference once it's been set up to do a task. And typically we think of AI as doing things that used to require human computation or complex human reasoning. And so now I would say that we see both AI and algorithms in dating apps. Even though people don't think of it that way, I think that we are increasingly going to see dating apps starting to brand themselves as having AI. Even though they already do, I could see them sort of saying, like, hey, we have added this AI helper to help you draft a text message to your potential partner. But the thing is, they're already doing that. There's already like, if you're on Bumble, you can pick from like some prompts to help you start a chat or whatever. That's AI, right? Like that, it's already there. It's just maybe now they're gonna say, like, "We have a chat assistant for you," but it's been doing the same kind of thing the whole time, and as far as dating apps are concerned, like, the algorithms that we know of, the things that they do are called sorting mechanisms. That's what they call them in their patent. That's the sort of language that they use to talk about them. So sorting and matching, and what they do is well, supposedly. I like to say that everything that we learn from a patent shows us the intent of a company's design, and they do it in a way that is safe for them to secure their patent, right? Like they want to protect their invention, but they also obscure it enough that someone else can't easily replicate it. So it shows us the intention of the design, but not exactly the nuts and bolts. So you won't ever hear me say they're doing this with 100% certainty because we don't know. That's not what the patent is designed to do. And I don't want to get sued. So
So,
I just
yeah,
like to put
exactly.
that out there.
And they have money, so
Fair enough.
they have a lot of mine. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that is to say that from what I've read in the patent, they will evaluate your sameness or how similar you are to someone. So they might call it a similarity score. So they're going to evaluate something about you. Attractiveness is part of that, I believe, based on all of my research.
Can I
Um,
can I just quickly, as someone who is that person who doesn't use the apps, I'm really struggling with the idea of how attractiveness can be rated on the apps, even in yeah. I mean, can you help me with that? Like, what's going on here?
okay, so what I read in the patent is that they might have, let's see, a score from 1 to 9. And your attractiveness level or your user score, as they call it, which is based on maybe attractiveness, which is based on how often you use the app, which is based on how often you're talking, right? Your relevancy score is what they might call it. Um, is
like
going to be a
popularity.
right, your popularity, right. It's going to be a 6. So let's say that you're a 6, you're going to mostly see 6s and 7s. Occasionally someone that's quote unquote out of your league, but for the most part, you're going to see people in your league, right?
This is blowing my mind.
I know. And so that's why I first got into this because I heard the co-founder of OkCupid talking about this. And he said, if you think your matches are ugly, it's probably because you're ugly. And he said it in this like really like glib, funny way. Right. But I was horrified. I was like, this isn't funny.
That's not
Um,
funny.
right. And so then I was really thinking, okay, what does it mean that they have this metric for attractiveness? Where does it come from? Who was establishing it? And based on my research, it seems that it really is this objective, in quotes, evaluation of attractiveness that is very much rooted in white, Western, heteronormative ideology. So if you fall anywhere outside of that framing, then you're deemed as less attractive by the apps.
So are we combining that assessment with how popular you, not how popular you are, but how much you use the app is also part of your attractiveness score? Is that, have I got that right?
I'm not 100% sure, because I've read several different articles about how they might um, how they might do their math, how they might run their algorithms to produce the score. There is an article in, I believe, Fast Company where a guy talks about going to Tinder headquarters and asking to see his rank in the app and being really sad when he found out what his rank was. And he was an average white guy, so like to me it's not surprising, to be honest.
Yeah. I love that they were just like, yeah, sure, here's your score.
Right, like white guys always over evaluate
You, my
themselves,
friend,
so
are a
like
strong 3.
Imagine.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what, I don't remember what his score was, but he really was like feeling a way about it. Like he was basically like, I'm mid, and I was like, yeah, dude, like
Like most of us would be ultimately.
right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like for the most part, unless you're a celebrity or someone who's had like facial work done, you're not going to have like ideal facial symmetry. You're not going to be celebrity status without celebrity money. And because of that, like beauty very much is in the eye of the beholder. So it doesn't really make sense that they would be leaning so heavily into attractiveness, which is why I think that race and religion and weight and money and class also play into how they're evaluating people's similarity scores, which in a way you could say makes sense because people do care about those things. But to me, it seems unfair and disingenuous to take that power away from each individual and to just automate it in the way that we were talking about. Like in the way that Emma said, it really seems unfair to say, okay, we're just going to do this process for you, and we're not going to tell you that that's what's happening. And we're only going to show you people in this social category. That seems unfair, and people should know that that's what's happening when they're using the apps.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, it has, you know, height, weight, income, ethnicity, those qualities have nothing to do with compatibility, which is ultimately what they're selling when it comes to encouraging people to be on there and to be active users in finding a match. I mean, I think again, the longer people have been using these apps, I think the attitude towards them has definitely changed. But there are still people again who don't know about these things and don't talk about these things, and I think there's also a lot of, and I think, I mean, it's also a lot of, it's our attitudes around being single and dating as well. I think there's a lot of shame behind or behind it, right? Like if you're not getting a lot of dates, if you're, it's like that's a reflection on you. Again, like we're talking about our attractiveness and how other people perceive us. And so it kind of gets into your mind like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I keep putting myself out there and I'm not matching with people that I like, or the people that I want to match with I can't match with, and it's just, the cycle continues.
It's really interesting because two things. One, I was talking to a friend like last weekend or the weekend before, and she is on the apps, and she was talking to me about, you know, the fact that she never finds the person that she's attracted to on the apps. And we were watching something on TV, and she's like, that's my like that's the kind, like he's basically my ideal type or whatever. I was like, oh, okay. Well, like I was like, being ever positive me, I was like, we can drum this up for you.
She's like, we can
I was
do
like
it.
literally going through my Rolodex, like, and then she said to me, but someone like that would never match with me because he's a 10 and I can't remember, like, I don't quote me on this, but it felt like she was like, and I'm a whatever that lower score was. And at the time I like rubbish off. I was like, what is this? Like, this is ridiculous. Absolutely not. Like, why would you say that about yourself? But this is really like shedding some light for me on that interaction in that moment.
People still, people still talk like that as well, like rank each other in terms of tens and sixes and fives and whatever.
But I think being on the apps will obviously, based on what you've been saying, will literally shift your own perception of who you are and where you sit in this like scale of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I really, part of what I'm doing with this book is hoping to help, especially women of color, unlearn that thinking, right? Like, just because the app is reflecting to you one kind of reality doesn't mean that you have to buy into that reality or that it has to inform your entire existence, right? Like, I've pulled quote unquote tens. Honestly, they're kind of jerks sometimes. Like, that's why they're still single, because they're jerks. Like, obviously there are different reasons why people are single, like by choice or because things haven't worked out. Like, I was single for a really long time, so this is not shade to anybody out there. But often there's a reason why, like, these highly popular users haven't made the choice or like found themselves with people, right? So, I mean, I think that this idea that we have that we're not a 10 on the apps, right? Like, because of my round face or whatever, I'm probably not a 10 on the apps. Like, I mean, I have matched with some pretty typical, like, model looking people on the apps, but because I'm not the typical whatever, I would say that's not my usual experience. And so, but it's so crazy because it's like the apps are doing all this work to curate an experience for you, but then when you're out in the real world, like, trust, I am pulling. Like, sis is getting chose. I mean, I'm married. So I'm just saying, like, it's really wild to
We
think.
love
Yeah,
that.
it's like a weird, weird, surreal Sims universe where like they've got their own rules in that world, and therefore, like that's how it works out. But the other thing, to your point about, um, women of color and men of color, if obviously there's that thing that you said about popularity in terms of like you like using the app and how frequently you use the app and so on. Obviously people from different backgrounds and who are doing different work, etc., if you're doing shift work, you're not going to be on the app all the time, you know so there's so many factors here that can completely mess up your whole flow, like if that's what they're doing. It's Yeah, it's really interesting that you said that the founder of the app said, oh, if you are not matching, you're not attractive, or I can't remember the exact phrase, but literally the is it is it Masari or whatever he's called?
Adam Mosseri?
Yeah, he literally came on the other day for Instagram or Threads and was like, basically, if you're a content creator and you're not doing well, it's because your content's shit.
I
And
mean,
it's like the
that's their answer
same.
to everything.
It's always your fault. It's
Yeah,
always
It's
your
always
fault.
your
or
fault.
you're not, basically, you're not on the app enough.
Right. It's never, oh, we have inbuilt bias. Our app doesn't work for creators of color. Our app doesn't work for small businesses. Like, even if your content is good, we're not going to push it because you're saying something we don't like or whatever. They're never taking responsibility. And I think that's my biggest frustration with big tech is that they're not taking responsibility for the ways that their technology limits and constrains people's movement in the world.
And could you tell us like what your online dating experience was like for you? Like is this how you met your
Yeah,
partner?
I met my husband on Tinder.
Oh my god, cute.
Yeah, and I mean, I had been, like I said, swiping since 2013, so like, like I guess 7 or 8 years. And I had Tinder, I've had OkCupid, I've had Bumble, I've had Hinge, I've had Plenty of Fish at one point, like all the
All
things,
the ones,
Coffee Meets
yeah. All the
Bagel.
classics.
Yeah, all the classics, exactly. I've tried some like Elite Singles, which is trash. No one on there is elite. Don't do that one. It's trash.
Raya, we have Ray. I don't know if they have Raya.
Yeah, I've never used it. But yeah, I mean, I've dated literally every kind of person in terms of like ethnicity and race. Like I don't have a type in terms of I will only date this kind of person. I definitely think I have aesthetic preferences. Like I like long-haired dudes. If that means your locks are long, if that means that you got wavy hair, curly hair, whatever. I just like long hair. If that's a fro, like whatever it is, I like long-haired dudes. Um, that's my jam. And I like a nerdy guy who looks like he reads books. Like that, if you are that, no matter your race, like I'm into that. That's the
Oh,
vibe.
Nicole, you just found a new wing
I
woman.
know. I was like speaking to me as a reader.
Yeah, like a nerdy, like kind of outdoorsy guy, not like gonna make me walk 10 miles on
I
the
was gonna say,
weekend, but
not like
like
gonna wake me up at 6 a.m. to go running.
right, exactly. But like we're gonna take a walk every day after work and like I'll be like, look at the birds, and he's like, oh, that's a cool bird. That's our vibe. Like that's what I found.
Congratulations.
I
Thank
love
you. Thank
that.
you. Yeah. But before that though, man, it was wild. Like I would be getting matched with like hyper conservative dudes in Texas and I was like, "Oh no, this is a no for me." And they would say things like, "Oh, I've never like matched with a black girl," or like, "Oh, I've never been with a black girl." Like, like the typical stuff and I'd be like, "I don't care and I don't want to be your first."
And
Like
also, like, what are you meant to do with that information? Because it seems like they're fishing for something, and I haven't quite gotten to the bottom of what it is. This happened to me recently. Some guy said, I think this guy was also Irish. So he was like, I've never been with a black girl before. And I was like, don't know what that's got to do with me. I was like, and it sounds like you won't be. So I was like, I don't know what that means. I was like, what are you trying to find out? I
right?
don't
You're
know.
not finding it out here.
Exactly.
I went on a date with a Welsh guy when I was in London once, just for funsies. Like I was using the apps abroad and I was like, oh, this is fun. Like, let's just see what happens.
See, yeah.
Oh my God, he was the biggest Trump supporter. And I was not expecting that across the pond. I was like, you're not even in America.
So
Why?
weird.
That's so weird. That's so
Yeah.
scary.
It was so bizarre. Like he presented like all super liberal and cool. And then when we like started talking at dinner, he was like, actually, like, I just don't really understand like why you guys hate Trump so much. Like he's actually doing really good things for your country. And I was like, this is such a weird conversation for a first date.
There's so many levels on which this is so horrible. Like, there's the American explaining, should we call it? Like, you don't
Right. Why
even,
are you explaining to me?
yeah, the politics of my own country. Can we just stop right there? But so, why do you think you were being matched with the Conservatives? Like, what was the deal here? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I think it's because there weren't that many of anybody else in the small town where I was like, there's just an abundance of conservative people. Like I had swiped through all of the liberal people. Like there just weren't that many people. So I was getting matched with the conservatives and um probably because I was like pretty religious at the time, but I still considered myself to be liberal. And in the early days of Tinder, I don't know if y'all remember or know, you used to link your Facebook page to Tinder to get access to the app. And so because of that, I probably had like my church groups and my whatever, and they were like, "Oh, these people would link," and I'm like, "No, no, no, we're not the same kind of conservative. This isn't the kind or I'm not even conservative, right? Like we're not the same kind of religious, I should say. I'm not interested in that."
And it also, again, shows like how it's changed a lot as well, like in terms of how, I mean, not in terms of, I guess in terms of matching in a way, because I mean, we haven't talked about this yet, but definitely I think Hinge is like the proprietor for me in terms of this kind of like really egregious, what I feel like is just modern day segregation, I think, at this point.
Actually, there's a chapter.
I was like, is that what you called it?
There's a chapter in my book where I call it automating eugenics because it feels very eugenicsy to me.
Doesn't it? This is why I was like, it actually kills me because I'm like, to me, Hinge doesn't get called out enough for it, because not only do they have the fact that you can use race as a deal breaker for you, which, and I've heard both sides. Like, I've heard people say that obviously they themselves wouldn't want to date someone who wouldn't be open to dating outside their race, and I get that. And then I've also heard people saying, well, like, I'd rather them not want it, like, not interact with me at all, like, knowing that they could be that could be their attitude, which again, I totally get.
I have heard both as well. In my
Yeah.
research, I've heard both as well.
So hang on a minute. The justification is that you don't want the person who wouldn't date outside their race to interact with you.
Yeah, like, so I was talking to a friend of mine, and because I was saying, I was like, this deal breaker thing is nuts. And she's like, well, actually, and she's white, and she was like, I wouldn't want to date another white person who wasn't open to, or not even just a white, but another white person, just anyone who wasn't open to dating outside their race. Like, that was their overall
Got
attitude
you.
towards
I was
dating.
thinking of it like, as in, they're not going to interact with you because they've already decided that they.
I mean, they wouldn't, because they've already decided. They can use that as a feature on the app as a deal breaker for them, so they wouldn't even see you.
Yeah.
I think that it does for folks of color. I will say, I think that that is a good protective measure, because if you are having these experiences where men are always saying to you, "Oh, I always wanted to try out an Asian girl. I always wanted to date a spicy Latina." Maybe you're tired of that, and so you just say like, "I don't want to hear from white dudes today. Like, I need a break from hearing from white dudes who only want to try me out as the flavor of the week." Like, to me, that is a valid use of that as a protective measure. And same thing with going to apps like Black, like the BLK app or whatever, where you are trying to date inside your culture because you're trying to protect yourself from the sort of like the politics out there of the craziness, right? But at the same time, I think that there's a line between, okay, I'm protective, and people have their reasons. Like, if you only want to date within your culture, that's fine. I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that. I think people get to make choices for themselves for whatever reason. But if your objection is just based on like skin color and the stereotypes that come with that skin color, you got to check yourself and figure out why you have that belief system.
I guess I just don't know whether the app should be facilitating these things. In your article, you were talking about, that kind of sameness as what is kind of been built in as an attraction measure, which obviously has its our podcast is about being mixed, and that obviously has its implications for, like you pointed out in your article, there's been a lot of historical, political, social measures to prevent race mixing. And that's something that, in writing our book, we felt was like so close to every issue that we touched and every current day experience or challenge that people in the mixed community were having or facing. Like, that wasn't very far away. And so, yeah, like, obviously that sameness matching in terms of attractiveness has its implications in that space. And then when you think about all these things that they're building into the algorithm, it just feels like egregious, like, even to be saying, I don't know. Yeah, I just find it egregious because it's not just that one thing that can then serve a community. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just fighting the whole thing.
I agree. I agree with you. I don't think that it should be up to the apps to do it. And when I talk to like audiences in person about this, I usually say like, if you're in a position of privilege, if you are a white person and you are filtering out an entire group of people, you should ask yourself why you're doing that. Or the opposite, if you are only selecting Latina women because you think that you have some fantasy about Latina women, you should ask yourself where that comes from, And whether that's like respectful of other humans, I don't know. Like, as a white person, would you be comfortable with people who only wanted to date you because of the social status associated with whiteness? I would think not. Maybe they
I would
are.
hope not.
Right, I would hope not. Maybe they are, though. I don't know. But it's sort of like, would you want to have that experience be your experience?
Our book, The Half of It, is out this summer. The book is not only an extension of ourselves, but everything we talk to you about on this podcast and in the DMs. Please head to the show notes where you can find a link to pre-order. Pre-orders are so important for new authors, so support us and get your copy now. I also noticed in your article, you said that people, one of the first questions people would ask you is, are you mixed? And, you know, I thought that was really interesting, not just because it feels like an odd question in the first place, but also because the stats that we've looked at, that we speak to in our book, tell us that mixed women are the most fetishized group on the apps, or they experience the most fetishization whilst they're on these apps. Why do you think that was the first question people went for, and do you think it's linked to this?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely linked. I think people don't know what to do with racial ambiguity. Humans like to be able to categorize people, and because we've set up these racial systems and caste systems and these systems where we can sort of like neatly put people into boxes, when you don't fit into a neat box, people want to know what's happening. They have to sort of make sense of it. But I think it also is that exoticism aspect. When you don't fit neatly into a box, you're not just black, you're not just white, you're not just Latino, you're not just Asian, you're not just whatever the thing is. People can't say, oh, I think, like, I know that Filipino women do these things, right? Like, if you are Blasian or you're Blaxican, whatever your mix is, right? Like, people don't know what to make of your culture and they don't know how to navigate that with you. And I part of that is about racial coding. The way that we talk to each other often is racially coded, even if we're not actively thinking about it. Like the conversations that I'm going to have with a group of Black women like us, like a group of, well, I don't identify as mixed. Both of my parents are Black Americans. There's like, we have a whole range of shades in my family, right? So I don't identify as mixed, but the conversation that I'm going to have with women who are Black presenting is maybe different than the kind of conversation I'm going to have in a room of, as we would say, mixed company, right? So I think people are trying to figure out, how do I interact with you? Do I code you on your Blackness? Do I code you on your otherness? Do I code you on your mixedness? And people are drawn in by this element of exoticism. Also, so I have one of the quotes in my book where, with an interview with someone that I did who was Asian, who was saying that his friends, in particular his Black friend, was telling him, if you're going to date Black women, don't date the darker skinned ones. They're ghetto. Always date the lighter skinned ones, because they're a little bit better. Like, they're easier to deal with. So there's these stereotypes that if you are closer to whiteness or you're mixed with something else besides Black, then you are somehow not pure Black and therefore you don't have the negative stereotypes associated with.
That somehow cancels out some of the negative things.
Yes.
Again, this weird eugenicsy
Exactly.
fucking
Exactly.
pseudoscience.
Thank God I'm married. Like,
She's like,
this entire.
she's like, Emma, I'm literally every day I'm just like, deliver me, because this is actually too much.
It is. It's really, I know. Whenever I hear from people that are like still dating, my friends are like, sis, we are out here in the trenches. Like,
I say to Emma every day, I'm like, you don't want to be out here. You do not want to be out here every day.
yeah, when I see those TikToks and people are like, if you got a husband and you mad at him,
Yeah, they're
fix
like,
it.
just
If you
forgive
got a
him.
wife, right? They're like, if you got a wife and you're not happy with her, too bad. You better deal with it. Like, fix it.
That's what it is. I'm gonna get to some of those TikToks, I think, in a minute, but I also, again, I really wanted to, again, I was like, Hinge is on my list. If I could get in front of Hinge today, I would have so much to say, but I
Me
do
too.
think
Hinge, if you're listening,
Hinge,
we'll come. We
we're
are
coming for
willing.
you. Drop your location now.
For real.
You have 24 hours to respond.
Exactly. Honestly, but again, like, 'cause again, we were talking about this. What was it? Sorry, what was the title of your chapter again? About the eugenics.
So it's not the title of the chapter, but it's a subsection. It's called Automating Eugenics.
Automating eugenics. Yeah, I wanted to bring us back to the automating eugenics, and again, this, like, the what is colloquially referred to as Rosedale. And so again, if people listening who've never used Hinge or they don't know, basically Hinge has a feature which is called a standouts page, where they kind of section off people who I'm assuming learn is most attractive to you in some way, or like they think is really attractive. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm assuming everyone's standouts looks different. I wouldn't know because I've not
I don't
compared it.
know. I haven't been on Hinge in a long time, so I don't really remember what it looks like.
But yeah, essentially I'm assuming, again, based on this level of this attractiveness scale that we've been talking about, and you can only speak to them, like interact with them, if you send them a rose. And a rose, a digital rose, obviously, and a rose is something that you have to pay extra money for. Whether you buy one of them or whether you buy 10, 20, I don't actually even know, because I refuse to pay these apps any more money than I'm already paying them. Because again, you already have to pay pretty much now. You already have to pay for every app because you won't be able to use a lot of the features, i.e. swiping, messaging, etc. So it's just this perpetuation of like not only like racism and prejudice, but this like these classist behaviors. Like it's just so appalling, the idea that you have to like spend more in order to speak to somebody that they deem to be outside your level of attractiveness. And again, without any guarantees. Like so what I would love, I don't know if this kind of research is even out, but like I would love for some anecdotal stories, like if anyone's listening and who's willing to share. But like, how much money are people spending over time with these companies? Not only with their subscriptions, but with just, the add-ons.
Yeah, the thing that is wild is that they actually have been caught charging people different rates depending on.
I'm gonna die.
This is like the most.
This is sick and twisted.
Capitalist, racist clusterfuck is just like out of control.
Yeah, so it's not even based on, I haven't seen that they do it based on race, but I wouldn't be surprised. But it's based on age often. So based on your age, they are changing the scale. Also based on socioeconomic status, they will assess what that is and then charge you a different rate.
How would they even know that? Oh, I guess you.
Oh, they're using lots of inferences. Like they can, so there are things that they do supposedly based on their patent. They will look at your profile and actually look at how you've constructed words or sentences to assess IQ level. So there's lots of things it's literally eugenics. Like there's lots of things that they're doing that they can just sort of assess. They know a lot about you. They can
Nicole,
they think they know a lot about you.
You need to get yourself to a cabin in the woods and get off the grid right this moment, because this is not okay.
Well, let me tell you right now. I was like, Hinge thinks I'm an uneducated poor blackie. Let me tell you. So.
Oh no.
I was like, so that's what I'm dealing with at the moment. But so thanks, Hinge.
That's terrible. So the thing I was gonna say though is that they actually have been taken to court over this in California.
Yes, I saw this on Valentine's Day. That was stunning work by the people who did that.
Yeah, so people have absolutely like fought back against this, and I think that is now illegal in California, but it's still legal everywhere else. So just know that is happening.
I'd just like to once again, I know, Nicole, I know you told me about this yesterday, but I'd like to once again express my shock at Rosedale. Like, what in the...
It's nuts, isn't it? It's the most bizarre thing I think I've ever seen in a long time. It's literally just what they think are like the most attractive people. Again, I don't know if it's most attractive to me or most attractive to everyone or who. Again, this popularity thing, I
And you
think.
have to pay to get to speak to those people who are most attractive.
Yeah.
But those people who are most attractive, they don't see that money, do they?
Oh no, they're
Oh
not
no.
getting paid.
Oh
No.
no. They're not seeing a dime.
And like when I was on Tinder, you know how people can send you super likes. So, I used to get a lot of dudes who would super like me because it's like I either had probably already swiped no on them, like I passed, or I probably was going to say no. So they were like, "Hey, you can get her attention by super liking," right? So like
Exactly. It'll prompt you. Yes, it does that.
so I would see it though, and I would be like, y'all know I don't want to talk to this person. Like, why'd you put, I don't want to talk. The super like is not going to make me want to talk to them more. Like, no, pass. The answer is still no. So I imagine that, like, I mean, I don't know, because it sounds like Hinge is a little bit different. And if you're in Rose jail and you actually just like want to talk to a regular person, that sucks, right? Because sometimes the super likes, I'd be like, oh, this is interesting, but it really does take your attention and directs it to those people. So they're monetizing our interest in that way.
And so, sorry, this is not going to be me bashing Hinge for the rest of it, but another thing that I've noticed as well is obviously it knows, like you were saying about the machine learning and stuff, it saves all of your data. So it knows the prompts you filled in, it knows the pictures you've used. And so whether or not, and you can, so many people, delete their accounts, refresh, start again as new, because again, it's the idea that once you start again as a new user, it pushes you out to people because they're like, oh, there's new people like that we want you to see. So in theory, you have a better chance of like seeing new people being matched with somebody else that you may not have seen before on the apps. But with Hinge, and I'm assuming this will happen with most of them because that's what tends to happen is they all become basically the same and have the same features and do the same sort of things. Um, it recognizes you. It knows your phone number. Obviously, it knows your email address, so that knows that you're the same person. So will then give you the same matches that you've received, from months ago, maybe a year ago, whatever. The cycle kind of you cycle through the same people, which is what happens to me all the time. I will delete the thing, re-upload it, even with new pictures, even with new prompts, even with new answers, and it still knows that it's me, and I still get matched with the same people that I've rejected being
Same
matched
uncles
with.
that you've already.
The same uncles, the same drug dealers. Sorry to the men of
Oh
Croydon.
no. Oh
So, I was like,
no.
sorry to sorry to these men. Um, I mean, you do you and make your money, but not for me.
It's not your preference.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, so it just brings you back to these same people because again, in my mind, again, I'm just seeing this as this kind of modern day segregation I was talking about because it's just like, okay, well, this person is still part of this group. I'm again really convinced about the location thing as well. Like where I live in South London is like has its own particular stereotypes attached, and I'm literally seeing it play out like on the app, and I'm just like, I don't understand what's going
Because
on here.
you're not being put into anyone's rose jail because they've assessed you with their like racist, classist biases and poorly assessed information. And so that means you're not in a rose jail and you can't see anybody in your swiping activities
Or yeah, I was like the men that I see
that
like
they don't think suit you based on their assumption of you. Sorry, I'm just breaking this down for everybody who doesn't actually use the apps
And
because
also based on their assumption of them. So it's not just based on whether they think that you will like them, but it's that they think that those people won't like you. So they're doing both ways.
yeah, exactly. And again, all it does is it just keeps you there. which is ultimately the goal.
But it also perpetuates behaviors and like it reinforces racially coded evaluation systems that people already like, and biases that they already have. Or maybe it like creates these kind of like ideas in some way, because if you're just constantly being fed the same thing over and over and over again.
But it's the belief that also, again, as a single person, it's the belief that this is the only way that you're going to meet someone, right? Is like this, not only is it um this efficient way of meeting people, an efficient way of meeting multiple people at the same time, it's also like it's meant to be like a democratic and like completely open way of meeting people that you would never normally come across from all over the world. Even like it can open you up to people from outside outside your city, outside the country. But actually looking into it deeper, it's not that way, and you're kind of in this never-ending loop of paying for more access to the people that you would want to speak to. Um, and so I guess, I mean, we're coming up into the hour now, so I feel like this is a good time to ask this question. Like, what what is the responsibility of big tech? Like, what is the responsibility of these apps to be ethical to their users in this way? Like, do we not think that we're owed the agency to make our own decisions when it comes to meeting people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good question. Um, they don't think they have any responsibility to us, but I sort of, I mean, not sort of, I firmly believe that they have a right to make the experience safe for everyone. Like, if we're paying for a service, that company should be guaranteeing our safety to use that service. Just like, when I go to a concert, when I go see Beyonce or Lizzo or whoever I'm going to see, Beyonce has paid people to make sure that us who are paying $500 to go see her are having a safe experience, right? So it's the same thing. If we're paying you, the least you could do is ensure our safety. And I think that that's going to require an expanded definition of safety, because right now they think of safety in these very limited terms of, oh, we protect your data, which they low key don't. Um, oh, we will protect you if you make a police call, right? Like if you need help, we're going to work with the police, right? Things like that. Sure, but are you protecting users of color from fetishization? Are you protecting user sense of agency, sense of self? Are you being transparent and trustworthy? All of these things have to go into our definition of safety. If we are really trying to keep people safe, we have to also think about their mental health. And they put a lot of that onus on the user, where it really should be on them if folks are paying for this service, right? Not even if they're paying for it, in all cases, because they're getting so much from us. They're making a profit from our data. And going back to what you're saying earlier about deleting and downloading. So I will say, like, Match Group has like something like 35 plus different companies in their umbrella, and they all share data. This is on their website. So you can go to Match Group's website and see that they share data, and they say that they do it to protect us. So yes, they probably do have your data stored somewhere. And I would encourage listeners to request your data download. So I did this in 2019. I requested my data from Tinder, and they made it really difficult. I feel like you can only do it from a desktop. You can't do it from your phone, which is like, who's logging into Tinder from their
From
desktop?
their desktop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. But you have to have a desktop enabled platform. You request it. They take like 72 hours to send you your data. And then once you get it, the link, you only have 24 hours to download it. So they make you jump through all these hoops to get your own
To
data.
get your own data.
Why?
And then the thing is, though, y'all got to do it, because when I did it, it was shocking. It was like they had every picture I had uploaded, they had every single match that I had, they had every conversation that I had. They like blur
I'm
out.
scared.
Yeah, they redact other people's messages to you, but all the messages that you've sent are there in the log. They have your geolocation data. They have all of the groups that you joined on Facebook. If you linked your Facebook, any of your accounts, they have everything. So people really should take a look and see how much data these companies have on you. And when you think about that and how they're able to monetize that data, they are getting so much from us. And all we're asking for is protection and safety, and they can't even do that. It really infuriates me.
Can you ask for them to scrub your data, or can that never happen once you've...
I don't know.
I'm assuming it's somewhere in the T's and C's, whether or not that's a possibility. But yeah, I can imagine it's probably not. And even if it was, I'm sure it exists somewhere in some other form with some other platform. Because like you say, obviously Match Group is kind of like the monopoly on all of these dating apps in particular. So with the cross sharing, I can imagine your stuff is just everywhere then.
Well, ladies, this took a sinister turn.
Yeah. Such a dark turn. But we live in hope, guys. We live in hope. And I was like, maybe, this episode is not about me finding love, but I hope it's on the horizon.
Me too. I hope
most likely not on Hinge, but
if that's what you want, I hope that for you too. Not everybody wants a partner, and that's fine too.
And that's fine too. Exactly. Yeah. As always, thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, as it really helps boost us in the charts. If you enjoyed this episode, please do share it with a friend or loved one or enemy. We're not picky. And if you haven't already ordered a copy of The Half of It, please order one now. It is the best way to support us as podcasters and authors. We couldn't do it without you.